And there's a history of this. There's a reason why our people kind of, sometimes stay afraid. And I think that fear is used as a really powerfully manipulative tool when it comes to politics, when it comes to economics, when it comes to education. When we are afraid of outside entities, we're afraid of each other. The economics of fear is very, very deep. And so what I'm going to do is read some stuff to you that I guarantee you never learned this in school. I guarantee you that your teacher in your whatever history class you took, they never taught you the stuff Dr. Claude Anderson teaches you. And I also want to remind you that of how important this man is. This man is the goatest of all goats. I will never be the goat. He is the goat. I will never be the original. He is much more original than me. And I want to make sure we know this, right? And so anything that I am, I exist because of him. And if you want to go take a look at some of the stuff that he does, some of his books, stuff like that, you can go to powernomics.com. Powernomics.com is his website. And I'm very proud to say that the Black Business School, we didn't just tell Dr. Anderson we loved him. We stepped up and we wrote checks. We wrote checks for hundreds of thousands of dollars to support what Dr. Anderson's doing. Any celebrity that's reached out to talk to Dr. Anderson, I told them that they needed to support him. If they wanted to talk to him, I said, you got to support this man. I said, too many celebrities reach out and they use him and abuse him because too many of our people they feel, in my view, I think sometimes we just don't feel powerful enough to really lift each other up. Like we feel like, our whole community is supposed to be a charity case. That's one of the reasons why you have such resentment against Black business owners. A lot of times, like, they'll complain all day about a Black businessman making money, but they won't say anything about white people making money through business because they believe Black people are supposed to be the rappers and the athletes and the entertainers and the workers, and white people are supposed to run the businesses. Well, with Dr. Anderson, one of the great things that, and I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning this, but I want to share this because I feel passionately about this, is that a lot of famous people have called and said, oh my God, I read Powernomics, is amazing, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't really actually do anything to support what he was doing. And one thing that you should understand is that in other communities, in the Jewish community, if you're doing something good for the Jewish community, you'll be sitting on $1 billion. They will raise hundreds of millions of dollars for you. If you're in the Asian community and you're doing something good for, say, Chinese people, they will make sure that you are well paid. They'll make sure that you have plenty of money so you can focus on your mission. That's where universities like Notre Dame come from, because those who believe in the Catholic Church, they write checks to the Catholic Church. They write checks for institutions. And I want to ask you all this: what institutions are we consistently writing checks to support? And I bet for most of us, the answer is nothing, because we believe inherently, we've been trained to believe, as Black people, I believe this, we've been trained to believe that we're supposed to be the benefactors of institutions. We're supposed to be the charity case. We're never actually supposed to be the people who actually do the charitable work to support the causes of others. We're supposed to be the ones who who are the Make-A-Wish kids and whatever. We're supposed to be the ones who are benefiting from the charity of others. And I want you to understand that that's a disability. That's disabled thinking. That's thinking as if you're some sort of weak nuisance or liability. And so one of the things that I did say, when Kanye reached out and wanted to talk to Dr. Anderson, I said, well, I think you should support him. I'd like for you to do something for him, like at least use your big Twitter account. You tweet about Kim Kardashian and all this other silly stuff. Tweet about this man. Tweet about Dr. Anderson. And he did. He stopped talking. And I said, "Are you there?" And he said, "Hold on for a minute. I'm making a tweet." And I said, "Oh, really? Okay. All right. Well, no problem." And he tweeted, to his 15 million followers or whatever, that everybody should read Powernomics. I said, "Thank you very much." That was worth. That endorsement right there on a big platform like that was worth a lot of money, right? Ice Cube, I'm proud to say he did, I said, let's go 50-50. I'll put up 20,000, you put up 20,000. Let's buy some copies of Powernomics so we can give them away. Ice Cube said, okay. And we did that, right? And so some people do step up and do things. Some people don't. Some people just say, oh, this is really great. This is really cool. I love this. Or they make promises and they don't follow through on the promises. And so with Dr. Anderson, one of the things I felt was really important was I said, I don't want to just support you by talking about how great you are. I want you to have institutional power, institutional support. All these HBCUs out here, it freaks me out that we have all these HBCUs that won't touch any of the ideas that this man has shared. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? What is it about powernomics and reparations and the legacy of slavery that makes you so scared? Like, I don't get it. I don't know. Can somebody tell me what is it that Dr. Anderson does that makes him worse than some of the other people that they bring to campus? Some of the Democrats and Republicans who've used and manipulated Black people since the beginning of time. Some of the people, the corporate slave masters who have exploited the Black community for many, many decades. What makes him worse than those people? I don't understand that. I just don't get it. And I get it, but I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it. So it's really reading Dr. Anderson's books that helps us to get it, right? When you read about, and I'm going to read this chapter, I'm going to read on page 18 in his book, The Black History Reader. He's going to talk about actually why Black Americans are more vulnerable to terrorism than other Americans. And so we're going to talk about that. But really, when I read some of this, I was thinking actually about the word fear and how the economics of fear kind of drives so many things. In fact, when I'm talking to students in the investing class, you'll know, if you're in the Prime program, for example, you'll know that I talk about how in investing, two emotions you want to avoid are greed and fear, because greed will cause you to overextend yourself and put yourself in a bad situation. Fear will cause you to run away from a good situation because it got temporarily bad. Do you understand? So fear is what causes you to run away from good things. And greed is what causes you to overextend and create bad situations for yourself, right? So effectively, fear is something that exists quite heavily in our community. It's something that is a driving force behind a lot of our actions. Not only are we fearful of other people, we're fearful of each other. Sometimes we're fearful of ourselves. Sometimes we're fearful of our own potential. Sometimes if someone comes up with a solution, we have a fear of just ideas that are different. Right? Like I'd rather repeat the same thing that my family's been doing for decades, even though it's not working, because I'm so scared of the idea that I might have to consider something new. Now, give me a yes if you understand what I'm saying. Give me a yes also if you can hear me. And I admit, I apologize for I was a little bit rude today. I didn't even, sometimes my idea is already there and I jump right into it. And I didn't even take the time to greet y'all because, I love y'all. And so I want to make sure I say hi to Milani. I see Veronica out of LA. I see, I think Veronica. Oh, I talked to you today, Veronica. Yeah, we did it one-on-one today. Good to see you, sister. Good to see you again. Antoine Brown, Leroy Dawson from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Rochelle out of New Orleans. James Keller out of Philadelphia. Rhonda Holmes, NYC. Ruffin Cat out of Maryland. The B1 family, Maryland in the house. Oh, so Ruffin Cat brought his whole family. Good for you. That's right. Bring your whole family. Get your whole family on board. I talked to a brother today, Errol, but it wasn't the other Errol that's always here. I bet Errol's in the building. This is a different Errol that lived in New York and he went to school at Brooklyn Tech. Errol, this brother is doing very well. And he was talking about some investments he's making for his family. And he's talking about all the great things that he's doing to establish a generational legacy. His family, he's been a student in the Black Business School for a while now. And his family has multiple businesses. His children are helping to run those businesses. He's making moves, making expansions. He owns all kinds of stock and options and assets and real estate and everything. And I said, you're exactly what I had in mind when I started doing this. You're creating the ultimate B1 family. The B1 family is, to me, like a family of superheroes. It's a group of people that are focused on being on code, being sharp, being there for each other, hard work, long-term focus, right? Long-term planning, breaking generational curses, getting the help that you need, right? So this brother today, again, he came in and we did a one-on-one. Every now and then we do one-on-ones. Chanel's in the chat. If you want to schedule one, you can just talk to Chanel. Her email address is Chanel, CHAN, that's one N and two L's, CHANELL at BoyceWatkins.com. So if you want to do a one-on-one, feel free. Chanel at BoyceWatkins.com. That's her email address. I'll say it one more time, Chanel at BoyceWatkins.com. That's one N and two L's. Feel free to hit her up if you want to do a one-on-one. I do a few per month, maybe about 4 or 5. But anyway, I just really, I was really touched, when I talked to him and he was giving me, he was giving me my flowers and saying, you had a great impact on our family, stuff like that. And I appreciated that. But I said, you have a greater impact on me because you're the reason I do what I do. Like your families like yours are the families that I had in mind when I sort of said, okay, you know what? I'm going to go out into the wilderness in a world full of chaos, and I'm just going to scream to the top of my lungs, and I'm going to do it every single day, and I'm going to scream specific instructions on exactly what we need to do in order to win. I don't know all the answers, but I do know a few, and my doctorate's not worth nothing, right? It took many, many years to get it. So, and the thing is that this economic game can be figured out with some basic steps. And so for those of you that are out there doing it, that are making the difference, I want to encourage you and congratulate you on being the truth seekers, the gatekeepers of power. You are building legacies. And I told Errol today, I said, man, I don't know how much money you have. It sounds like you have a lot because you're talking about these big investments you're making. But I said, you ain't seen nothing yet. I said, when your grandkids get a hold of those resources that you have, you're going to have multimillionaires and billionaires in your family. They're going to start where you finish. So you're in your 50s and you're up here. He was smart. He was on point. He's been with his wife for 31 years. He wasn't running around with 8,000 women. He had one wife all those years, and he just focused on building these businesses, and they're doing very well. But I said, this is just the beginning. You don't understand. When you're planting the seeds the way you're planting them, and you're being very deliberate and very intentional about the culture that you're creating within your family, you're using the divine masculine power that you have as the head of household. A great man is not always a good man. A great man isn't always a good man. A great man can be a good man, or he can be an evil man, because great men have to make complex decisions, right? So I said, you're a great man, but more importantly, also on top of that, you're also a good man. And to me, a good man is a great man who uses his greatness for good as opposed to evil. Because remember, you've had great men. Malcolm X is always a great man, even when he was Malcolm Little. Even when Malcolm Little was running the streets, tricking people, lying, killing, stealing, slinging dope, whatever he was doing, he was a great man back then. He was great at what he did. He was a great drug dealer. He was a great pimp. He was a great killer. He was a great gangster. He was always the leader, right? So the difference was, and this is where Elijah Muhammad came in and really made a difference for him, is he turned him from being a great man who used his greatness for evil to a great man who uses greatness for good. And so what I told Errol today, and I hope you don't mind me sharing some of this. I probably shouldn't have used his name. I should have asked him, but I apologize, Errol, if you hear this. Is I said, a man in his household, in his family, give me a yes if you're following what I'm saying. A man has the ability to either make dreams come true or create like an endless supply of nightmares for the people around him. A bad father, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the absolute terror and horror that a really toxic, terrible man can do to his family. Has anybody ever had a man in your family who was misguided, who just, scared the hell out of everybody, mistreated people, let people down, traumatized everybody, right? Like we've seen this, right? We both talked about our fathers going to Vietnam and getting hooked on heroin. Again, another thing the government kind of just happened to do to Black men that, again, we also deserve reparations for that. Because what they don't teach you about in school are things like Project 100,000, where their goal was to get 100,000 Black men to go into infantry so they didn't have to send the white men. Did y'all know that? How many of y'all have heard about that? Give me a yes or no. How many of you heard in school about Project 100,000? I heard about Project 100,000 from a little white guy who was my history teacher at the University of Kentucky. And he said Project 100,000 was where they said, we can't get enough people to go into infantry in Vietnam. It's horrible. It's a nightmare. It's terrible. You're going to be screwed up for life. And so what they did was they went into the hood. They lied to Black families, and they told the mothers and the fathers. They said, we're going to take your son, turn him into a man. We're going to bring him back as a solid member of the community. He's going to have a great job. He's going to have all these great opportunities. And what they did was when they got in the military, they sent them straight to infantry. They sent all the Black men to infantry. And in fact, it was so bad. I had when I was teaching on the faculty at Syracuse University, I had a chairman, a very nice guy who happened to be white. He was Greek, though. He's from another country, but he was a white guy named Peter Kovios. And Peter told me that when he was in the military, that he wrote a letter to the government because he said, I don't understand why in my unit or in my platoon, or, don't forgive me if I get the words wrong. I know we got some real soldiers up in here and I don't want to get the language wrong, but y'all know what I'm talking about. He said, I don't understand why y'all keep sending the Black guys to Vietnam. He said, you're not sending the white guys. You're sending all the Black guys, but none of the white guys, right? So this is another type of racism that they don't talk about. And Errol and I were talking about this, about our fathers going to Vietnam, getting hooked on heroin because it was an absolute nightmare. And just and you think about what that did to the family. I've mentioned to you guys repeatedly that when you look at the data, the worst thing to ever happen to Black people was drugs. Pretty much. Drugs just obliterated the Black community. I have no idea why we're okay with these crazy rappers coming out here being paid by these record label owners to promote drugs in your community. That is another deliberate, direct effort to sabotage and destroy you. Can't nobody depend on a drug addict. And so that means in general, I think that you should have a very strict policy when it comes to drugs in your family. Either you get rehab or you get the hell out. Seriously, either you get rehab or you get out. And also, if you get married or whatever, don't marry or date a drug addict, and sure as hell don't become one, because drugs, if you look around, the number one pattern that you notice when you see a lot of these kids on shows like Love and Hip Hop who are crazy, super traumatized, like there's this couple, Christian and Blueface, who two crazy, I mean, they're just out of control. They're kind of like the new Bobby and Whitney. They got drugs. It's drugs, drugs, drugs. They're on drugs. Their parents were messing with drugs, I think. I'm not sure, but I got to double check that. But, you always hear about drugs or prison. Those are the two themes that you pick up, that their parents either were on drugs, in prison, or both, in absence in their lives. And next thing you know, these kids grow up and they don't know what to do. So effectively, these are the things Errol and I talked about. And I said, I really appreciate and respect you because you really get it. You understand. You're the reason that to help develop one of you, I'll deal with 100 crazy Negroes to get to one of you. That's what it's. So if it's 100 to 1, that's fine. I'm okay with those ratios. I will go through 100 crazy people to get to that one father, that one mother, that one child, that one person who's going to understand where I'm coming from, apply even a fraction of what we talk about, and see what happens. Because I think a lot of these ideas that we discuss are very powerful and very beneficial. So anyway, let me get into the book. Do me a favor, by the way, if you haven't checked on the All Black National Convention, I hope you guys will consider coming. It's going to be October 20th in Atlanta at the Marriott Marquis Hotel. We still have a few slots for vendors. If you want to be a vendor, you have a business, you want to sell your wares at the convention, you can. Also, we have sponsor roles, so which means that we'll promote you during the convention, online, all that stuff. So feel free to go to allblacknationalconvention.com. The convention is less than a month away, and the discounted hotel spots, they close up in a few days. So if you want to get your hotel at a discount, go ahead and go to allblacknationalconvention.com. All right, so let's start reading here. All right, so we're reading the Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson. We're going to start on page 18. This is question number 6. And his question is, are Black Americans more vulnerable to terrorism than other Americans? He says, Black Americans are most definitely more vulnerable to terrorism than other Americans. Terrorism is rooted in human psychological pathology that seeks to intimidate, injure, and control other humans based upon the religious, political, or racist ideologies of the terrorists. 5 centuries of institutionalized enslavement, Jim Crow segregation, and benign neglect have made Black Americans a favorite target of conservative terrorists, hate mongers, and religious zealots. And some people would say even some of the liberals have been terrorists, at least fascists, right? And not letting you have any kind of free speech, deplatforming you, because we got deplatformed on Instagram, so they've been terrorizing us, and it drives me crazy. Anyway, Blacks are the most identifiable and vulnerable population group in America because they are totally dependent upon non-Black racial and ethnic groups for their safety and daily needs. Just as they are unprepared to protect themselves in the case of civil unrest or natural disasters, it will be even more difficult for Black Americans to protect themselves from institutional-based, cultural-driven terrorism because they live in cultureless, porous, dysfunctional communities instead of close-knit, functional Black communities. Blacks lack a defensive code of conduct. How many of y'all agree with that statement? Give me a yes or no. How many of you feel that, if there was like, I don't know, a nuclear war or something where all the systems broke down, the Black people will probably be more vulnerable than everybody else? How many of you feel that we'd be less prepared for any type of significant disaster than other groups of people? Give me a yes or no. Okay, so give me a yes or no. How many of you think that maybe we should try to consider doing something about that? Yes or no? What do y'all think? All right, so you know what? So I don't want to be a talker. I want to be a doer. So I'm going to say to Chanel, who's in the chat. Chanel is part of the Hebrew Israelite community. She's a ride or die for the Black Business School, and we love her. Remind me, I want to get some people together and do something on basic survival. Like, what does that look like if there is some sort of incident where all the systems break down and you have to get your own food and find some way to survive, hunt, fish, run your generator, whatever, right? I don't know if we spend enough time talking about that, right? I don't want to be into so deep into the disaster prep culture that we think that the world's coming to an end every single day. I don't want us running around scared and constantly paranoid. However, I think generally speaking, there is a lack of preparedness that we have on even the most basic level. I mean, a lot of us aren't even prepared to lose our job, let alone lose the hospital and the grocery stores and the banks and everything else, right? So if you really think about that, what does that even look like? If you have trouble even building a community, like building buildings and putting the HVAC and the carpentry and the plumbing in the buildings and defending yourself with weapons and things like that, what really happens? I mean, if the stuff really, really, really goes down, what are we going to do? Do we have a plan? And some of you do have a plan. I've talked to some of you, and some of you are ready. Some of you, my father is really ready. My father has entire freezers full of food, and he has generators that can run for weeks. And in fact, that was put to the test. There was in Louisville, Kentucky, where my parents live, there was a winter storm, and all the electricity went out for the whole city. And he and my mother were good. Their whole house was had full electricity. They had plenty of food. They were cooking dinner like any other day. Everybody else was completely in the dark, freezing, because it was the dead of winter when this happened. And that was just a basic disaster, right? So I would say that maybe perhaps it might be important, instead of us just talking about stocks, bonds, businesses, and corporate jobs, we also talk about basic survival. So I'm going to put it on myself right now to promise you that at some point we will come up with something with our team that will help you in this area that we can present to you. Okay. So, and I would like for you to just tell me that you'll consider participating when we offer that. Okay. So Chanel's in the chat. She's going to remind me to do this, because as I'm reading Dr. Anderson's book, just so you know, I've never read these paragraphs. So sometimes I'll stop because it'll make me think about something I hadn't processed recently. So, all right. So let's keep reading here, because I'm a victim of all this nonsense too, right? I'm relearning, I'm re-educating as we all are, right? In terms of thinking about the things that we need to process as Black people. All right. So let's keep reading here. He says here on page 18 in the book, The Black History Reader, which you can find at powernomics.com, he says Blacks are the most identifiable and vulnerable population group in America because they are totally dependent upon non-Black racial and ethnic groups for their safety and daily needs. He says the definition of a functional community is a physical community that has a culture and code that supports an alternate and semi-independent economy that produces services, goods, jobs, and has a tax base for its residents. In a functional community, people are familiar with each other and have common needs and interests. It is where they store and secure their wealth, power, businesses, heritage, jobs, products, and other resources. A functional community has an identity and an operational network of obligations between its members and socioeconomic enterprises. To successfully protect its members, a community must have a physical location and infrastructure that can be marked and closed if necessary against outsiders who might pose danger. Wow, we got a lot of work to do. Members who live outside the physical community can still identify with it by having a broad sense of community and sharing the common history, needs, and interests and goals, and the responsibility to protect and support the physical community and its members. The bane of the vulnerability of Blacks to modern terrorism results from their not having functional communities. Blacks were complicit in white society's destruction of Black communities that did exist until the 1960s. This is where he talks about integration again, right? And what that did to you. Now, Blacks have surrendered their community resources, sense of community, and collective ability to protect themselves from outside competitive and hostile groups that can and have historically terrorized them. In most instances, Black neighborhoods lack organizational institutions, local community communications systems, surplus food, water, energy, and medical systems. Let's write that down. Food, water, energy, and medical systems. Food, water, energy, and medical systems. Where do you get your food? Where do you get your water? Where do you get your energy? Where do you get your medicine? Do you have hospitals? Do you have, what if the grocery stores don't exist? What if there's no fast food restaurants? What would you do? I think that's what he's asking. The integration process diluted or removed experienced Black leadership from Black neighborhoods, leaving those left behind unprepared to deal with terrorists or other life-threatening crises. Just like the KKK symbols and marches, the primary goal of terrorism is to create fear and confusion horrendous enough to disrupt socioeconomic systems, paralyze citizens, and inhibit the flow of needed daily resources. Terrorists are unlike a classic standing army. They do not wear uniforms or bear standardized flags. They are advantaged by being unknown and invisible. They pledge their total allegiance and lives to a political ideology or religion. And most importantly, they do not actually exist until after they've committed the terrorist act. If they are successful in committing an act of terror, the media becomes complicit by promoting the successful act, which publicizes the cause of the terrorists and demonstrates their ability to achieve their objectives. They are not interested in how they are labeled or what consequences befall them. Terrorism functions best in open societies where people have many freedoms and their movements and activities are not under suspicion. Terrorists thrive on publicity and seek the notoriety of public identification. Although episodes of terrorism are newsworthy events, extensive media coverage sets the stage for even more terrorist acts of violence. And then he has a picture here on page 20 of Klan members parading down Pennsylvania Avenue right next to the White House in 1925. Very interesting. Okay. Again, just like blacks have been impotent against the KKK and other forms of terrorism, the United States of America itself is totally ill-prepared to fight, let alone win a holy war or a terrorist-waged virtual war. Our government leaders promote the belief that America is the world superpower, a world police force that has politically obligated itself to be the moral conscience of the world. Our response to terrorism as a nation is anemic, illogical, and ignores what is known about the true nature of international terrorism. Black America is even more defenseless and vulnerable when the largest society has organized institutions and resources. There is no interest nor any incentives for other ethnic or class groups to take care of the needs of Black people. There's also no visible evidence that Blacks have made preparations to protect themselves. Isn't that what we were just talking about? All right. The electrical blackout of 2003, which impacted the entire Northeast region of the U.S., sent messages to Blacks that other groups felt no obligation to share their resources with Blacks during a major crisis. In the Detroit area, for example, many white and ethnic suburban communities did not permit Blacks from the city to enter for food, gas, or other essentials. Anybody remember what happened in this little city called New Orleans when the people in New Orleans tried to go to the town next door? Y'all remember that? And they pulled out the guns and met those people at the bridge. Anybody remember that? So what's interesting to me and what Dr. Anderson appears to be saying is that when the stuff really hits the fan, that's really when you learn who your friends are, right? It's much easier for someone to pretend to be your friend than it is for them to really be your friend when times are tough, right? Or when resources are short, or when you're fighting over scarce resources at the same time, right? So effectively, this is something I think that's important to understand, right? When if the stuff really hits the fan and the electrical grid goes out and there's a nuclear weapon that's been launched to, on a major city and all the services kind of shut down, I think that is a bigger question. How are we going to survive? What are we going to do? Right. And you talk about Katrina. I think Katrina was an interesting example of just what happens when these things sort of befall upon us and we're not ready for that. So this comes back to the lack of institution building in the community. This comes back to us not really sort of thinking in a way that's going to make us the kind of community we need to be, right? I think it's a scenario where now, especially now that things like affirmative action are gone and stuff like that, it does require us to go back to just some very basic ideas, right? Like, and I encourage you maybe to sit back and ask yourself when you're talking about what to do with your kids and how to educate them. Here's how I would process this. A lot of people aren't going to get it. A lot of people aren't going to understand this. A lot of people are not going to be ready. There's millions of sheep in the community. There's millions of people that don't really want to think about it until it happens. Unfortunately, there are people who are trained to be reactive and not proactive, right? Because reactive, it's easy for me to react to something that's already happened, but it's hard for me to be proactive against something that may or may not happen, right? And so a lot of us, financially and otherwise, we just sort of say, okay, well, I'm just going to sit here and be vulnerable. Because again, I think that being Black does mean that this society, it gives you a wheelchair. As soon as you come out of your mother's womb, they roll you out of the hospital in a wheelchair and they put you on a crutch and they tell you that you're nothing but a victim. You have no control over your environment. The best thing you can do is go get a job and vote for the Democrats. That's your only hope, right? So what effectively occurs is that when it comes to doing the big boy, big girl work necessary to sustain the community, the proactive work that's required to actually build and develop and maintain something, we don't do it. We sit back like the kids do. Think about this. If you have a little boy or a little girl who is in a situation where something needs to be built, and there are grown men standing around and grown women, the kids are going to sit back and they're just going to watch. They're going to sit back and they're going to play. And while the grown-ups are doing the work, grown-ups are doing the heavy lifting, grown-ups are doing the planning, grown-ups are paying the bills, grown-ups are developing the infrastructure, because they're kids. Why would kids get involved, right? They can laugh and play and run around and kick the ball or whatever, right? Well, to some extent, I want you to look at our community in general. And I want you to see how much time, if you look on social media, see how much time people spend. Frances Cress Welsing, RIP, Ashe to her, she talked about this. She said that millions of our people are trained to just sit back like little children and laugh and play and get into buffoonery and over obsessed with sexuality and pleasure-seeking behavior, lazy stuff, just not really thinking strategically about anything, not making plans for anything, not trying to prepare, not trying to really go for the wealth, education, power, all these other things. Just, getting online and gossiping about who some celebrity got pregnant or saying, oh no, y'all, they over there fighting, just whatever, just silly stuff. Talking about their favorite rapper, entertainment, all that stuff, and I really think that this childlike behavior is taught to us, I think, very early. And it's also the reason that you don't have institutions in your community, because the people that are building institutions in other communities, if you watch their behavior, like watch the people who are donating time and money to build the Anti-Defamation League, they're not sitting around trying to do rap videos. They're not trying to be on TV and be flashy. They're not trying to get attention or get on social media and scream and holler about nonsense. They're focused on the cause. They're focused on the issue. They're focused on the institution. Same thing might be true for somebody who is an executive with Citibank. They're focused on the bank. They're trying to build the bank. They're not really thinking about, they're not really caught up in the nonsense that might be on the shade room, right? But so you look at our community, the shade room probably gets more attention than almost any institution in the Black community. And what does the shade room do? No disrespect to the shade room, but if you go look at that platform, all you'll see is the promotion of cultural debauchery. All you'll see is the constant promotion of people that are mentally ill, selling their bodies for $2.50. You're promoting absolute complete ignorance to millions of people. And this is what people end up gravitating towards. So effectively, people like that are just not prepared. They end up being sheep being led to slaughter. And so there are times where somebody says, well, Doc, are you worried about saying this stuff? Because it sounds like you're being critical of Black people. And I said, no, I'm not being critical of Black people. There are plenty of Black people who understand what I'm saying. You just aren't talking to the right Black people. You're not talking to the same Black people I'm talking to, because the ones who are offended, they're not doing it. They're not into that stuff. They might see it and laugh about it or make a joke about it or two, but they're taking care of their families. They're raising their kids. They're educating themselves. They're doing whatever. So I think somebody literally said, Doc, I think they're going to cancel you if you say that. I said, first of all, you can't cancel me because I own everything on my platform. So you can't cancel the boss. You can cancel. If I was an employee, yeah, you can cancel me from my job. You can do it, but you can't cancel somebody who owns things, right? So no one's ever canceled me. That's never happened. But then number two, it's like some people, I want them to cancel me. I want you to cancel me from the culture. I want you to bring the words cancel culture, because I need you to cancel me from some of that culture. Some of that culture, you need to cancel me from. Just scratch my name out of the culture, because I don't want to be part of none of that. I don't want to be. Cancel me from the culture that involves Black men acting like little punks. Cancel me from the culture that says Black men are disrespecting Black women. Cancel me from that. I need you to cancel me from the culture that says that we want to be as ignorant as possible. Cancel me from the culture that makes us weak and begging the white man to take care of us. Cancel me from the culture that involves laziness. Cancel me from the culture that involves a lack of strategic thinking. Cancel me from the culture that involves buffoonery. I want to be canceled from that. In fact, not only am I asking you to cancel me, I've already canceled myself. So let's just get that out of the way right now. And I've had this hard conversation with rappers. I had a really famous rapper reach out to me one time and say, Doc, if you keep talking like that, some of the rappers are going to think you don't like them. I'd be like, well, maybe that's good. That's smart, because I don't like some of these assholes. I really don't. If you're trying to tell young 17, 18-year-old Black children to go get hooked on drugs, I hate you. Just so you know, more importantly, I don't hate you. I'm sorry. Hate's a terrible word. I hate your record label. How about that? Y'all get what I'm saying? Is that okay? I don't want to say I hate you, because you're the puppet. Like if I bring out a puppet and this puppet says, like here's what this is, the Negro naysayer puppet. Sometimes I bring him out every once in a blue moon. So if he says, Boyce, you're an asshole, right? I don't hate him because he's a puppet. He can't control what he says, right? So rappers are like this puppet. Somebody's got his hand up your booty and he's telling you what to say. So when I say I hate what you're doing, that doesn't mean I hate you. I hate your puppet master. I hate what they represent. I hate what they're doing to our people. That's what I hate. So I don't hate you. So that's what I tried to explain. Of course, I don't think he understood it. I think you be hating, dog. You be hating. Man, shut up. Don't talk to me like that. I'm not a kid. I'm 52 years old. I don't walk around, you be hating, man. They be hating, dog. We stopped talking like that when we were like 22 years old. But because you live in a world, I understand why you talk like that, because you live in a world where the black man is encouraged to be a child for as long as possible. And the problem that you have is that there are women and children waiting for your weak ass to grow up. They are. They're just like, come on, daddy. It ain't 1994 no more, daddy. You ain't got to keep sagging. You 52 years old, dad. Really, like that's what they're waiting. So I really think in general that there's a part of the culture I personally want to be canceled from that. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to fit in. I'll be with the cool. No, because you're losing. Why would I want to fit into a losing team? Like Deion Sanders, when he went to Colorado was 1-11 when the year before he came there, right? They're undefeated since Deion arrived. They were 1-11 when he got there. So do you think that Deion wanted them to like him? Do you think he wanted to fit in with whatever did you think that Deion came in and said, well, whatever y'all doing, I just want to fit in. I just want to make sure I don't make anybody uncomfortable. No, Deion, first thing he did was he came in and he said, half of y'all are going to be gone. Like you're out of here because you stink. You're terrible at what you do. I'm a winner. I'm going to bring some winners in here and we're going to flip this whole culture. We're going to go from a loser culture to a winner culture. I respect that. I do. I really love that. Right. So ultimately, that's what I think needs to happen. And over time, I think this is what's going to occur. I think that over time, B1 people, Black first people, intelligent Black people are going to acquire wealth and power, and you're going to flip the culture. You're going to say, no, this is not what we do. And you're going to come in and you're going to use all the wealth and power that your kids are going to have, and you're going to just flip the culture. You're going to force people to go along with the new sheriff in town, right? So ultimately, this is what I'm waiting for. This is what's going to occur. I know it's going to happen because the people that are prepared for the battle usually win the war. By investing consistently with your kids, you're winning the battle. By preparing for the future, you're winning the battle. By educating yourselves, you're winning the battle. By thinking strategically, you're winning the battle. So keep moving forward, win that battle, and then eventually, weaker people are just going to have to follow you because that's what sheep do. We're not sheep up in here. That's not what I want you to be. All right, so let's keep reading it. Let me keep reading. All right, so he says that Blacks must have their own backup resources. Whether in a dependent Black neighborhood or socially scattered guests in white communities, they must have protection and the daily necessities of life in emergencies. When terrorism, man-made or natural disasters strike, it will be very difficult, if not too late, for Blacks to gain access to vital resources such as doctors, hospitals, and grocery stores. Black elected officials, civil rights organizations, churches, and educational centers should take major responsibility to alert, organize, and prepare Black communities to deal with terrorism in any form because Black Americans are a vulnerable out group. I think about when I read this from Dr. Anderson, and by the way, I'm reading his book, A Black History Reader, which you can find at powernomics.com. Dr. Anderson it makes me think about the pandemic, right? Did anybody see, kind of the messaging during the pandemic? Did anybody else notice this? The messaging during the pandemic, especially when they were trying to get Black people to all go get the jab first, right? I was like, no, you get it first. Y'all go do it, and then I'll see if you survive. But anyway, no disrespect if you got it. I'm not here to tell you to do it or not. I'm just going to say I was looking at the statistics, and I said, so you mean if I don't get it, I got like a 0.01% chance of dying? I'll take 999 to 1. I'll take those odds, right? That was my thinking. No disrespect if you thought differently. I'm not saying that at all. But when they were saying that, remember what the constant rhetoric was? The constant rhetoric they used to explain why you should go get the jab first, which honestly was a big money grab. I'm not saying that it couldn't work and didn't work. I don't want to debate that you can have your opinion on that. But I know it's a money grab because I understand how these corporations operate. I was a shareholder in Merck. My stock like doubled or tripled or something in a very short period of time. So me and my wife made a lot of money from our ownership in that company. But what I noticed in that rhetoric was a constant theme that kept beating, a constant theme that was beating like a drum. And what was that theme? That theme was that you're the most vulnerable population. We're in the state of emergency and Black people are most vulnerable. we're here to protect you. Did anybody else pick up on that? Did anybody else pick up that during the pandemic? Well, you're the most vulnerable. Black people are the most vulnerable. And even Black celebrities were saying these things. They were like, well, our community is the most vulnerable. So that's why we need to do da 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 da. Right. Right. And my issue with that was, okay, first off, there's the obvious, which was, okay, why are you suddenly so worried about Black people? Because if we're the most vulnerable and you're worried about that, you could have made us not the most vulnerable. Like, you could have actually helped us 20 years ago, right? You could have started before Katrina and really showed that Black people mattered, right? But you didn't. So now maybe we're the most vulnerable, partly because you ain't never helped us to not be the most vulnerable. But then the second part of it was just this general consistent idea that is very bad for your subconscious. Now, remember, my wife is an expert on the subconscious mind, not an armchair expert, not somebody who got her degree on YouTube. My wife went through a rigorous, horrific doctoral program to get her expertise. I'm talking about when my wife started her PhD program, there were 5 Black people. 4 of them did not graduate. She was the only one who survived, and she defended her dissertation proposal 8 months pregnant and was sweating in that room with a bunch of angry white people asking her really hard questions, and she survived. Shout out to all the tough Black women out here. I married one, and I'm proud of that. Anyway, so here's the thing. She will sit here. If she was here, she would tell you that when they constantly refer to you as the most vulnerable group in America, you're the weakest ones. How are you going? Oh my God, how are you going to make, you poor Negro, how are you going to make it without our help? You can't, you're the most vulnerable. Do you think that gives you more confidence in yourself? Do you think that's going to make you stronger? What do you think? I mean, do you think somebody constantly pretending to feel sorry for you and talk about you like you're the chubby kid on the little yellow bus, and if we don't help you, nobody will? How empowering is that? Does that sound empowering to you at all? It doesn't sound very empowering to me. That's not empowering at all. So this constant language about how vulnerable you are, what's interesting about it is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what psychologists would call it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy because the more I remind you that you are the most vulnerable, the more vulnerable you're going to be, right? If I just say you're weak and you're vulnerable, and then we don't have a plan to get you out of the vulnerability category, then I'm not helping you. Maybe I'm going to exploit you. So what I'll say to you is that there's nothing beneficial about that kind of rhetoric. And honestly, I thought it was a bunch of BS, because now that the pandemic's over, they're not saying those things anymore at all. They're not offering you anything that's good. If they really think about this, they could also say, gosh, your community is broken and you're struggling and you're the most vulnerable in our society. So we're going to write that $12 trillion check for reparations right away. We're going to put you at the top of the legislative agenda to make sure you get your reparations so y'all can become homeowners and build some wealth so your businesses can get the funding they deserve. We're going to do it, right? They could do that too, right? Do you follow what I'm saying? They could do that. They could easily do that, but they don't. Why not? And if you just also even consider little basic things like how many small Black businesses died during the pandemic, because they really were kind of in a vulnerable spot, but yet those checks never arrived. That money never got there. They were giving the money to Amazon and Home Depot and big corporations. They weren't giving it to small business owners. So I hope that you understand the nature of the trickery. I hope you understand the nature of this absolute, complete manipulative buffoonery. And really, I will just tell you, I don't think that we benefit at all by constantly identifying ourselves as the biggest victims in America. Or if you are a victim, if you're a victim, it's okay. Sometimes maybe you really were a victim of something. A lot of us were victims of things. I was a victim of significant miseducation. I was a victim of having a father that didn't even show up for my birthday when I was born on Father's Day. I think I was a pretty damn good gift, but he didn't know that because the drugs were more interesting than I was, and that's fine. Maybe I was a victim of a few other things. When I was younger, I had a girlfriend I loved. She broke my heart, right? Maybe I was a victim of that. But here's the thing. If you're a victim, I don't understand why in the world you would want to maintain that status forever. I don't know why you would put yourself be in the victim toilet, in the victim mud, and want to stay in the victimhood. And some of us just swim in the mud of victimhood. I'm a victim. I can't do nothing. I'm a victim. I can't, I can't get no job. I'm a victim. I can't read no books. I'm a victim. That's why I sit around and smoke weed all day, right? I'm a victim. That's why I got 8 girls pregnant and don't take care of none of my kids because I'm a victim, right? And so that swimming in victimhood, I think I understand though why we might swim in victimhood, because victims don't have accountability. Victims don't, you can't blame a victim for anything, because then they'll say you're victim blaming, right? So victims don't have, no, victims neither have the willpower to fix their situation, nor do they have the incentive to fix their situation. Victims tend to sort of sit themselves down in a wheelchair or behave like the children. Again, the children who are watching the grown-ups do all the important work, right? Because being a victim means that if you come to me with a solution, and this is why some people get mad at you, when you have a solution, this is, you got the Negro naysayers out here. Y'all know who I'm talking about. You got the Negro naysayers out here that will find a problem for every solution. They'll find every time you come with a solution, they're gonna have a problem with it. And the reason they have a problem with every solution is because solutions require you to grow up and do the work. Solutions require you to take yourself out of the victim box and take accountability and do hard work and deal with the ups and downs that come with really trying to truly compete, right? And really, here's the thing, because you've been racially bullied as much as you have, when you're dealing with a bully, it's scary to deal with a bully, right? Black people have had the biggest bully in the history of the world up our butt since we got here, on the slave ships, right? I mean, ain't no bigger bully than the chattel slavery and everything else, the mass incarceration and the Jim Crow. I mean, we've been bullied like crazy. And here's the problem when you're dealing with a bully. If you're dealing with a bully, you got a choice to make, right? Like when I was a little kid, there was a guy that used to beat the crap out of me, and he was real big, and I mean, he was like 6'4" in the 9th grade. I mean, how am I going? And 250 pounds. Like, who makes children like this, right? So this guy used to mess with me, and I was like, damn. Okay, so what am I gonna do? I had a choice. I could either be a victim or and allow him to do whatever and or walk away or avoid him if possible and never ever retaliate, or I could stand up and fight back, right? Which means I might get beat even worse, right? So that was a hard decision to make. And just so you know, the decision I made was to stand up to him. And what's crazy was the minute he saw me stand up, because I had been lifting weights. I was a captain of the track team. So I started lifting weights and I got some little testosterone going. And one day I said, you know what? You're just gonna have to hurt me today. I don't care. I don't even care. And when the day that I stood up to the bully, guess what he did? I want y'all to guess what he did. What do y'all think the bully did? Give me an answer in the chat. What do y'all think? Yep, he backed down. He stopped. He instantly, like he stood in front of me and he was blocking me as I was trying to walk home. I walked to the left, he stood to the left. I walked to the right, he stood to the right. And then I just stopped. And then I stopped smiling. I gave him this look like, okay, I'm ready to die today in the 9th grade. And then he looked at me, he saw the expression on my face, and he was like, oh, I was just playing, right? And I was like, wow, that's so cool. He backed up, right? Because I mean, if he had really, he probably still would have whooped me. It would have hurt, but I was ready, right? So ultimately, I think that there are those of you that are tired of being victims, and you're standing up to the world. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out the way it did with that bully that I dealt with. Sometimes the bully doesn't back down. Sometimes the bully hits you. Right. And you have to be at a place where you're like, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being hit. I'm okay with as long as I fight. And I think that as a community, I think we have to fight. I think we have to fight for what we deserve. I think we have to fight for ownership. I think we have to fight to compete. I think that we have to fight to get our kids ready for the future. I don't believe in walking around just constantly accepting this idea, this fundamentally flawed idea that because I'm Black, I'm not just as capable of doing things as a white man. I just don't understand this idea. Why would in fact, that's almost like a racist concept, if you ask me, to believe that somehow because I'm Black, I can't work hard and prepare and do everything everybody else can do. It's going to be harder sometimes. It really is, right? And I'm not, and I know that we like to make that into either Democrat or Republican talk, but I'm not trying to talk as a Democrat or Republican. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I mean, I believe in some of the ideas, but a lot of them sound silly to me. It's Crips and Bloods kind of going back and forth. But I would just say, generally speaking, what's the other alternative that you have? What, to keep doing what you're doing? To keep waiting around for Superman? Like waiting for somebody else to save you? You know what the school system's doing to Black children. You know these things. This is not rocket science. This is not something that is required. It doesn't take a lot of work to prove this. You know what's happened when we enter into the economic system. You know, we get absolutely obliterated when we're out here chasing jobs and working for other people and all this other stuff our whole lives, living paycheck to paycheck. That does not work, right? So you have no choice but to consider alternative ideas, unless you do what I thought about doing when the guy was bullying me, which is to continue to accept my fate. And so some people, so the people that I love talking to are the people who are just sick and tired of it. The people who say, I deserve better than that. You're not going to do that to me. And I applaud you if you're in that category. Now, anyway, I'm going to read a little bit more. Dr. Claude Anderson has another question 7 in his book. It's called The Black History Reader. It's available at powernomics.com. And my website is boycewatkins.com. So if you want to go there, there's lots of free stuff there. There's a training there called How to Make Money Without Working. There's also we have things like, financial flashcards, stuff like that. In fact, actually, there's a code. Micah, who's on our team, sent me a code. If you want to go and get a copy of my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, or if you want to get some of our financial flashcards, anything like that out of the bookstore, you can actually go to drboycebooks.com, and for the next 24 hours, you can use the code book club 920. And for the next 24 hours, anything in the store is 40% off. So if you want to go there between today and tomorrow, use the code book club 920, all one word, book club 920. That's the 9. There's no 0 in front of the 9, and you got 40% off anything in the store. And you can go to drboycebooks.com, or you can go to boycewatkins.com and find the stuff there. So feel free to go and take a look. And I'll Chanel, actually I'll type it in the chat if you guys want to see the code book club 920. I think that's how she wrote it. All right. So anyway, all right. So let me read a little bit more here, and because I'm actually kind of excited about what Dr. Anderson just said. So here's question 7. He says, where are the Black leaders? He says, the term Black leader is an oxymoron. Based upon the definition of leader, one has little choice but to conclude that Blacks do not have leaders. A leader is a guiding or directing head of a group, one who leads toward a new direction after critical analysis of the social, economic, and political condition of the group. The leader would then develop a plan with strategies to take them to a better place. Moses in the Bible was such a leader. Clearly, the civil rights movement in the 1960s began with the intent to lead Blacks in a new direction, but the movement had no national plan, no destination, or group-centered measurable goals. The main issues were desegregation, voting rights, and discrimination that did not target equal distribution of resources, a measurable goal that had the potential to change the social construct on race for the group. So what he's saying here is that there was no interest in getting access to the money. That's what he's saying. That a lot of it was focused on political things like voting rights, desegregation, so you can go, shop at the white people's mall and live in white neighborhoods, whatever, and discrimination, which is, I guess, in their minds, maybe whether or not white people like you or something. Because the goals did not challenge the foundational problem for Blacks, and the movement became dependent upon government and corporate support, it was easily controlled, marginalized, and consumed into the policies of benign neglect and political correctness. This is why the Black Business School does not take corporate money. We do not take government money, because we understand the mistakes of the past. If you want to know our core values in the Black Business School, we believe Black people should educate our own children, create our own jobs, and support Black-owned businesses. If we do that, if we educate our own children, create our own jobs, and support Black-owned businesses, then we will achieve a tremendous amount of power. But it's going to take work, because building schools and building businesses is not easy. But if those businesses get support from people who want to support those businesses can become benefactors to those schools. So, for example, in the Black Business School, where we have raised over $20 million in the last several years, we have spent the vast majority of that money supporting Black-owned businesses, hiring Black people, and Black-owned schools. We only give money to Black-owned schools. We do not give money to public schools that have Black people in them because we know who's getting that money. We do not give money to big universities that will put students in debt for the rest of their life and charge them $80,000 a year for a bachelor's degree that gets them a $40,000 a year job. We do not do that. What we do is we find schools like King Randall School down in Georgia, and we write a check. We found the Freedom Home Academy International in Chicago, and we wrote a check, right? So ultimately, this is what is required. You have to have benefactors in your community that are independent enough to shape their own trajectory. It's harder to do that, right? It was much harder to build this institution without corporate support, without government support, right? People all the time were like, why don't you get a grant? Because I don't want a grant, because I know what comes with that. Well, why don't you go to Bank of America? You're a finance professor. You should be able to, you're an influence in the financial, because I don't want to be beholden to Bank of America telling me what I can and cannot say. I spoke at a group, I kid you not, I spoke at there sometimes Black people that work for corporations will discover me. Every now and then, mainstream Black folks will find me, and they get excited because they hate the corporate plantation the way we do. And so they'll be like, oh, they'll have a diversity dinner or something, and they'll be like, yeah, we should have Dr. Boyce Watkins come and speak at our bank. And I'll be like, why? Like, you shouldn't do that because I'm going to get you fired. Don't do that. Just understand what that means, because I come in, I'm going to speak truth, right? Even the light version of me scares the hell out of white people because they're not used to this. And they invited me in anyway. And because, my PhD is legit. I was teaching on the faculty at Syracuse at the time. And I went in, and I kid you not, I was like, okay, boys, don't get these Black people fired. Let's try to find a polite way of telling the truth. I don't want to get up here and lie, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to get nobody fired. So I kid you not, here's what happened. I went up on stage, and I was like, okay, we're going to talk a little bit about reparations. And I very politely explained that because trillions of dollars in wealth has been taken from the Black community, this is why Black people deserve reparations, because of slavery and the brutality of slavery and the wealth that was lost. Do you know, I kid you not, several white men got up and walked out of that room in the first 10 minutes of that speech. like literally, they got up, they just walked out of the room. And so ultimately the reality is that we're not in a world where the most significant truths about race, particularly race and economics, and what they're doing to Black people, can really be truly discussed. We just don't live in that world yet. We almost live in a world where if they did have a reparations debate, it's almost like premature, because when they come up with a proposal and they truly give you what they think you deserve, it's not gonna be anywhere near what you actually deserve. It's just not. Because what really is, because the education system is not very good, it's really sort of not understood how deeply America is invested in the disdain for Black people. Like they have a complete disdain for you. That's why even in entertainment, they promote the worst of you. You got rappers out here like Akila Honda who are talking about education and love and family and being a great Black woman. They don't want to hear that. They will literally promote the rappers. Like, if you ever seen this lady named Sexy Red, she is so hilarious. She's like the worst rapper ever, and all she does is rap about her coochie. And they will promote her over Akila Honda, even though the message is incredibly toxic. And also, she's just not even as good of a rapper. She's not even a good rapper, right? At least Cardi B's like a good rapper. But I always challenge you guys. I say, show me the white Cardi B. Show me the Asian version of Megan Thee Stallion, who's equally famous, who's really out here like twerking every time she goes on stage. Does Taylor Swift behave like that when she goes on stage and makes $1 billion? If Taylor Swift were a Black woman, could she do the same thing? A skinny little Black woman, right? So the reality is that there is a way. You've been typecast. That's my point. You've been typecast in a certain way. I don't think they take you seriously. I also don't think that they look at your scholars as being equal to their scholars, or your business people as being equal to their business people. Now, if you show up as an athlete, a rapper, or a comedian, then you got that. They're like, that space is yours because y'all are really good at making us laugh. You're really good at jumping and running and all this other stuff, but you're not very good at thinking. You're not very good at planning. You're not very good at leading. So we're really not interested in having you as in any sort of significant role. Like, you're not going to be the ones building rocket ships with Elon Musk that are going to take us to Mars. Y'all just sit back and rap and twerk, and we'll be over here building the rocket ships to Mars. And I think that's very unfortunate, because there are millions of really intelligent Black people who can be the engineers, who are the lawyers, doctors, professors, biology scholars or whatever, but they kind of get ignored. That's not as interesting as the lady, the illiterate lady who knows how to twerk. So this disdain, I think, makes it really difficult to integrate. You can't really integrate oil and water that way, right? So I'm going to be the oil, they're going to be the water, and then there are some people who do try to make it work, and God bless them. I hope they can be successful. All right, so let me read a little more here. We're on page 22 of the Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson. You can get a copy at powernomics.com. So Dr. Anderson says here, he says, clearly the civil rights movement of the 1960s began with the intent to lead Blacks in a new direction, but the movement had no national plan, no destination, or group-centered measurable goals. So I'm gonna jump forward because I already read that. He says, once engulfed, Black leaders became easily controlled and marginalized. On Black matters, they became invisible. Black leadership today has become symbolic and ceremonious. Old civil rights personalities, entertainers, and public officials have no objective basis or purposeful destination to lead Blacks to or away from the conditions in which Blacks are already mired. In most instances, those Blacks who want to be leaders have not studied or examined the economic or political conditions of the Black dilemma, Al Sharpton, nor have they crafted a corrective plan to improve the quality of life for the group. Their words lack academic discipline, and the solutions they propose are most often without direction or purpose. Al Sharpton. All right, so my point here is to say, and I'm not really dissing Al Sharpton. I'm gonna say this about Sharpton really quick, just to be clear. I've said it before. I gotta say it again. I sat next to Sharpton. I didn't dislike the guy. I mean, I'm talking about sitting next to him for hours and hours and hours at a time, back in maybe 09, 010. I will say this: he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. Right. So I am not here to say Al Sharpton is not an intelligent man. He's very, very smart. He remembers things. I think he has a photographic memory. I really believe that. The problem that I have with certain types of Black leadership, and he's symbolic of this, is that when you don't have the proper economic base to support what you're doing, or to give the middle finger to people trying to control you, then you really can't get anything done. So in many cases, the person who has a small institution that they can control completely is better off than the person who's affiliated with the big shiny institution who has no power at all. Do you understand? Do you follow what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? I'm really telling on myself right now. I'm telling on myself because I've been affiliated with big institutions that didn't belong to me, and I felt completely powerless because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. I had to do what they told me to do. Why? Well, because they have the economic base. It's their house. I can't go in another man's house and make the rules and move around the furniture and tell them what color to paint the walls. I can't do that. I could not do that at Syracuse. Right. So what I said, okay, let me go and create this little tiny thing called the Black Business School. It's going to be funded by my paychecks and my work ethic. And let's see if we can turn this into something. And so we started digging with the shovels, one inch after another. And lo and behold, first we're reaching 2,000 people, then 10,000, then 50,000, then 100,000, then 1 million, then 2 million, 3 million, whatever. And that became our space. Like that space, like really, that go back to that conversation we had about canceling. Somebody said, well, Boyce, if you keep doing this, they're going to cancel you. I'm like, cancel what? You can't. What are you going to do? You're going to get me fired? I'm never going to fire myself. You can't. No. Because if I get fired, my boss has to fire me. And last time I checked, my boss lives in the mirror and he's loved me for a very long time. So no, you live in a world where Black people are typically like this puppet. I'm being silly today. Like this puppet. You're used to Black people, so-called Black leaders being the big shiny Negroes on TV, right? So you put this puppet on TV and it looks like he's talking and he's calling the shots. Hey, y'all, I'm a baller. And he's dancing like the rappers do. And look at me, I'm famous. And you don't understand that all he is he's got somebody's hand up his butt telling him what to say. That's like rappers, unfortunately, even when you talk about the rappers, the big shiny Negroes you see on TV, they're not only are they powerless typically, but they're not even real artists, because a real artist can have free reign for self-expression. No, they're not artists. Many of them are just corporate products. And I understand, again, remember my background's finance. So I understand that when you shape a corporate product, the people that have the power are the people who wrote the damn check. The person on the stage ain't got the power. The person who's got the power is the one who built the stage and owns the stage. So if you are famous because of Disney, Disney owns every inch of that ass. You ain't really got no real power. You just took a shortcut and they gave you the illusion of power, and you think that that's real because you don't understand how the power game actually operates. Puppet, get out of here. So my point to you is to say that in general, you got to understand what power is. And what I learned about power, here's what I learned about power. Power requires you to be willing to take the long route to school. Power means power is like, it's like when my father, one time when I was 7, me and my sister were in the car. My brother wasn't even born yet. And we were in the car with my mother and my father, and our car broke down on the side of the highway. And we had to walk, but the exit wasn't far. So we had to walk to the exit, right? And it was kind of scary. Like, walking on the freeway, it doesn't feel natural. But so here we were, this family, mother, father, sister, brother, holding hands, walking down the freeway. And there was this family that saw us, and I mean, it looked kind of sad. This little family walking down the freeway. They so they pulled over and they said, "Hey, would you like a ride?" And my father said, "No, thank you. We got this." And we kept walking. I'm like, and I remember thinking, why don't we get a ride, Daddy? Like, why don't, they offered us a ride. And what I understand now, years later, now that my father's in his 70s, I understand why he said no. That was his pride. That was him saying, no, I'm a man. This is my family. I got this. And I'm not putting them in your car. I'm going to get them what they need. I'm going to take them where they need to go. And that's just it. And so again, the point is to say that when you're talking about having power as a Black man or Black woman, you're typically going to have to build that. You're going to have to build that. It's going to be very rare that somebody who's got wealth and power is going to give you that power and say, do whatever you want with it. You can go represent your community, do what's right in the Black community with my $1 billion or my $100 million. You got to go build that. And the thing about it, and this is one of the reasons why I love telling you guys stories of Black and white owned companies and how they started with very humble beginnings, is because it's doable, but you have to follow a different protocol from the shiny Negroes on TV because they got their power instantly. They got instant power, and instant power is like instant food or instant Kool-Aid or anything instant in the kitchen ain't gonna taste as good as a real home cooked meal. Right? It's just not going to taste as good. If you get something out, if my wife cooks something for me and the recipe says just add water, that's not going to taste as good as that meal that she might have spent 3 or 4 hours, slaving over in the kitchen, where she had to chop the tomatoes and get the lettuce out of the garden and mash the meat up just right or whatever. Right? It's just not the same. The ramen noodles is never gonna be as good as when she really puts her foot in a good home cooked meal. So I think power is the same way. I really encourage you, if you want to have real power in this world, make a long power plan. And what is your 10-year, what's your 5-year, 10-year, 20-year power plan? What is your intergenerational power plan? And how are you gonna make sure that power is fortified in such a way that nobody can come in and just pull the rug out from under you? This is something I was thinking about in 2007. When I told my brother, I said, I think I want to be a public scholar. I want to do what Michael Eric Dyson does. I want to do what Cornel West does. I like those guys a lot. The difference is I don't want to do it the way they did it because if a Black man gets out of line, if he says the wrong things or he says them in the wrong way, or if he's too honest about racism, first thing they do is they pull the rug out from underneath him. They cancel his TV show. They cut his radio show. He loses his movie deal. He doesn't have his book deal anymore. His speakers bureau doesn't represent him anymore. So I said, look, we're going to have to do this the hard way. We're going to do this just like my daddy, who said, no, I don't need a ride. We're going to walk to the intersection. It ain't cool. It ain't flashy. It makes you look kind of raggedy walking on the side of the road. But that was a man protecting his power. Right. And I don't blame him one bit. So I'm going to encourage you as Black people, protect your power. Learn how to love that Black-owned business. As that little raggedy business that made $2 last month. I want you to practice loving that business as much as you would love some fancy job with a big corporate office, working down at UPS or McDonald's or Google or Amazon or wherever corporation, right? And I think this is really different from the culture that's out here, and I just don't, and that culture doesn't work. So anyway, let me just sort of skip forward here. By the way, the code, if you want to get a copy of my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I have another series called Black American Money. We also have financial flashcards for kids and workbooks for kids. You can get 40% off in the store for the next 24 hours. Anything in the store, anything you want to buy, use the code word Book Club 920. Book Club, all one word, 920. Okay, so feel free to go to drboycebooks.com and use the code Book Club 920. Also, my wife's stuff is in there too. You know, my wife is a therapist and she has some good stuff out. So feel free to type her name, type Alicia in the search box. You can find her stuff too. All right. So let me read a little bit more and then we're going to finish up for tonight. All right. So he says here, in most instances, those blacks who want to be leaders have not studied or examined the economic and political conditions of the Black dilemma, nor have they crafted a corrective plan to improve the quality of life for the group. Okay, so let's jump forward. He says, in other words, most visible blacks, what did I say about the shiny Negroes? I swear, me and Dr. Anderson, that's I would say my brother from another mother, but he's really my father. He's my second father. I love this man. In other words, most visible blacks do not equate to Black leaders. They are double agents who intentionally represent everyone, all races, ethnicities, cultures, religions, genders, and classes. They skillfully identify Black issues, but propose minority solutions to address them. You know, that little victim box. We got to be minorities. We got to be minorities, right? Okay. So they do not even purport to represent Black interests. Why? Well, because they'll get in trouble because America's been trained to hate you. However, the media, and those seeking to influence Blacks accept their symbolic leadership. Most visible Blacks are wedded to playing party politics, towing the line as politically correct individuals, and identifying with mainstream issues. They demonstrate more self-interest than group interest and deliver no tangible nor measurable benefits specifically to their own race. Whether they pretend to be colorblind or simply do not recognize the suffering of their own people, they seem to relish engagement in symbolic activities that are meaningless. This is page 23 of the book, Black History Reader. It's on powernomics.com if you want to go take a look. Symbolic leaders ignore the exceptionalism of Blacks and proclaim inaccurately that all groups have contributed equally to the development of this nation. When they accepted the myth that Blacks were not treated any differently than any other ethnic or population group, it became easy to neutralize or obscure Blacks and their historical exceptionality. As the loose purpose of the civil rights movement expanded and became more diffused, Black leaders and would-be leaders found more comfort and safety in advocating for realization of the dream of a colorblind society than fighting for a more self-sufficient and competitive Black America. They are now so colorblind, they cannot even see their own Black color. As a result, Black America increasingly views symbolic leadership as irrelevant and harmful to the Black struggle for survival. So that's the question I would ask you now. How many of you, give me a yes if you agree with me that, or if someone were to say most Black leadership is garbage or worthless or not helpful, would you agree with that statement? Give me a yes or no. Would you agree, yes or no, if somebody said most Black leadership is, about as valuable as the leftovers in somebody's toilet? How many of you would agree with that statement? I see lots of yeses, right? So what are we gonna do about that? Like, what's the answer to that? Like, did we just say that's just what it is? That's the way it's always gonna be, right? And I'm not gonna answer that question for you. I just want you to think about that because I'm not accepting any of that. I don't know. I'm not interested in any of that. I don't want to continue on the same stupid train that we've been put on before. And some of you are asking, who are the Black leaders? Like, nobody even knows who they are. You know what I mean? You know your favorite rappers are and stuff, but nobody really even knows who these people are supposed to be. So here's what I believe about Black leadership. I think that the Black leaders in your life are people inside your house. That's what I believe. I believe that your Black leaders are people that are inside your house. I also believe that you do have people in the community that have, for the most part, shown a consistent love and commitment for the Black community. Unfortunately, they don't get the support that they deserve. I think Dr. Claude Anderson, if you want to name him a leader, I think he's a great leader. I love Louis Farrakhan. These are two men that I am friends with, that I know I know Claude Anderson much better than I know the minister, but I've been to the minister's house on multiple occasions. And and here's the thing. I never really spend much time entertaining the idea that the minister is not a perfect man, because nobody's perfect. I believe fully that you have some people that would really die for the community, that really represent the cause in the best way that they know how. And I think that those people deserve unrelenting support. And that's how I feel. That's my personal choice. I'm not telling you what to believe, because I'm not here to tell you what to do. Okay. But I really think in general, maybe sitting down and thinking like, okay, who are the Black people out here that are really out here trying to get things done in a positive way, and empowering yourself enough internally to realize maybe there's something I can do to help them. Another example of Black leaders to me are like when I talked to Errol today, the brother that, from the Black Business School, and he was talking about what he's doing with his family and how he's teaching his children and how he's preparing for the future and making investments and educating his kids and all that stuff. I was like, oh, that's a leader. I want to support him. I admire you. I respect you, man. You're awesome. I look up to you, and I think that that's what it is too. I think that a lot of our best leaders are not shiny people that you're going to see on TV. Many of those people are compromised. They didn't earn their position. They didn't do anything special to get there other than maybe sing really well or dance really well or something like that, or play a sport. God bless them. That's okay. Right. I think that the leaders are people that you may overlook. You might see people in, so when you see that person that's got that struggling little Instagram page where they're doing all these things that you admire, but nobody's paying attention, maybe give them some positive words of encouragement. If they have a product, maybe buy their product. Or just hit the like button if you see their post. Little things like that, they may be insignificant, but I think little things like that, like acknowledging people because you acknowledge them, not acknowledging them just because they were acknowledged on TV or because the world acknowledges them. I think that's the first step toward intellectual leadership. That's the first step toward truly being a free thinker. So for example, Chanel is in this room. I keep bringing Chanel up. I hope it doesn't embarrass her, but Chanel is on our team. And Chanel has many kids, and she works her butt off to make sure those kids are educated in an amazing, extraordinary way. So what I see is, I don't see what she's doing right now. I see the struggle right now, but I also see 40 years in the future when her children are doing really amazing things in the world, and they've got children of their own. And this culture that she's helped to create with her amazing husband is permeated all throughout the family. So when Chanel is 85 years old, 90 years old, and she's got 47 grandchildren that are all, kicking butt and taking names, highly educated, starting businesses, doing extremely well, she created that, right? She's one of the seeds that helped to spawn this empire. Ain't nobody gonna mess with that family because they're gonna be too powerful. They're gonna be too strong, right? Too loyal, too connected, too committed. They're gonna be self-sufficient. All these things, right? So what I'm saying to you is, similar to Chanel, and I brought up, I hope I didn't embarrass you, Chanel. I want you to think of it that those are the Black leaders in your community. So I want you to see, in my view, I think you should consider this. Just consider this. Maybe instead of seeing leadership in terms of what people are doing right now, and how it impacts what's happening right now, maybe we can also look at leadership in terms of how it's going to impact the future. So that mother who's really going out of her way to raise her kids in a B1 fashion at the highest levels, that's a Black leader to me. That father who is holding it down, standing up for being intelligent with dignity, having standards, pushing himself to be better every day, pushing his children, loving his wife, that's a Black leader to me. That's a leader, right? Because a lot of his greatest teammates and the people that are going to really appreciate his work the most are people that are going to be born 30, 40 years from now. My wife, for example, benefits from things her great-grandfather did in the 1940s, because he literally made investments for them in the 1940s, and they were able to use those investments to buy her first house. They own a building in the south side of Chicago that her great-grandfather bought in 1932 or something like that. They still use that building. They still collect rent from tenants in that building, right? So you remember, you're not insignificant if you're doing your best. You matter so much. You are the leader that you are the superhero that you've been looking for. And I want you to really look in the mirror and see that and say, okay, what little more can I do to really impact the space around me? Right. So people like me, maybe we're blessed because I got a few followers and I can impact certain spaces, maybe a little more than a lot of people can. That's fine, whatever. But that's not important. What matters is that everybody has some space where God gave you power. Everybody's got some space where your actions are gonna matter. Like I walk in that room and how I talk to my wife is gonna matter. How I talk to the kids is gonna matter. Whether I turn on the TV or sit down and have a conversation and teach them something, that's gonna make a difference. And not just for them, but for everybody they interact with, every child that they have. If I somehow break through and teach them something valuable and important right now, that's what they're going to pass on to the world. That's what we're all products of the people who nurtured us, right? So that is, to me, the most important part of Black leadership that happens in the world today, right? So be a leader. Let's do this. If y'all would join me with this, I want to do a little corny exercise. Can everybody type the word leader in the chat? like leader. And I want you to think about that word and really internalize it, because I'm sorry, but I hate to tell you this, but your leaders, so-called leaders, man, they ain't shit. they're just not, they're just, and I'm not saying they're weak, they're bad people. They're not equipped for the job. They're not in the trenches. You're in the trenches. You're on the front lines. You're raising the kids. You're here. You're doing these things, right? So you're the leader. You're the leader. So think about this. If you take 100 dedicated Black men, 100 dedicated Black women, that's far more effective than one person on TV who ain't really doing nothing, who's making movies or making rap videos. Right. So that's where the leadership is. And the reason that leadership is the most authentic is because if we have some general set of ideas that we can agree on, where we all agree to be just on code on some basic ideas, like we want to educate our kids. That's not a hard thing to agree on, that we don't want dumbass children. Like, can we at least agree on that we want to educate our kids? Like, give me a yes if we can agree on that. Can we agree on this? Right? This is not complex. It's not rocket science. Can we at least agree on another basic idea? We want to build wealth for the future. We don't want our children to be broke. We don't want to be our whole family living in the midst of financial insecurity, right? So we don't want to be stupid. We don't want to be broke. We don't want to be slaves. Right? So these are basic ideas, right? Or maybe another basic idea is that I'm going to try my best to love Black women, and Black women, you're going to try your best to love Black men. Some people are a little less lovable than others. Let's be honest. But you're going to do your best, right? You understand. You agree that love and family is a core value upon which you can build. And in fact, it's hard to build without these things, right? You have to have love and trust and connection and all these other things, right? Okay, so if we agree on these basic ideas, then effectively, we don't need centralized leadership. That's the point. We don't need one or two super Negroes to be like, I'm the leader, I'm the greatest, I'm the most important. To hell with that. You already got everything you need. Like those three things: education, wealth, and love. Right? Love for each other, love for family, right? Like these are basic ideas. You can build an empire on those very basic ideas, and these empires can be built one family at a time, one household at a time. And because all a community is really is a collection of households. It's a collection of families. Right. And if you have 100 families that get together, even if they don't know each other, but they all operate on some very basic codes, like we don't want to be stupid, we don't want to be broke, and we love our families and love our kids and love our spouses, or if we can, as much as we can, whatever, right? Then they're going to be able to build a solid unit, right? So you come in there with some nonsense, they're going to be like, what is that? Like, we don't, that's not how we operate. We don't, the drugs, no, we don't do all that. Right. So that's what I think is a solution. And I know it's a solution. I know it can work. There's a book I have that you can have it for free, though. It's an ebook. You can have it for free. In fact, I'll text it out tonight. Text the word stock to 31996 and I'll send it to you via text. It's called It Takes a Village to Raise the Bar, a new paradigm for Black America. You can have the e-copy for free. There's a copy on Amazon. If you want to buy it, you can, but I'm not asking you to buy it. You can have this for free. It's very, very short. And I intentionally wrote it to be short because I wanted it to be almost like a very clear, it's a little bit like a manifesto. I was really angry when I wrote it, but passionate when I wrote it. And it's like 50 pages of four basic principles: wealth, education, family, and community, as four things that I think we can build on and really have the strongest community on earth by the year 2070. But it's going to take time. It's not going to happen in our lifetime. It requires us to have faith that the effort that we're putting out is going to make a difference, that when you plant a seed, that seed will grow. it's not going to grow overnight. Power does not accumulate in 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes a whole generation. Okay. So just text the word stock. Don't not stocks. Chanel, you said stocks. It's actually stock. It's stock, right? I think it's just STOCK. Text the word stock to 31996. So if you text stock to 31996, I'll send it out. I'll text it out actually tonight, right after we get done. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. I hope this conversation was beneficial to you. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I know I did. I had fun, and I cussed 2 times, and I apologize because some of y'all bring your kids, and that's just, but I hope it's okay. My father, blame it on my daddy. My daddy used to cuss in front of us when we were little, so that's probably where I got it from. But anyway, I will be back next week. So every Wednesday night at 8:30, we do the book club. We're reading the Black History Reader. Dr. Claude Anderson's books are all at powernomics.com. I hope you will go and support him because he is a great man and I love him. And without him, we wouldn't have this great material to read. And we're going to start next week again at 8:30. The convention is October 20th in Atlanta. Be there or be square. You can go to allblacknationalconvention.com if you'd like to learn more. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. I see my wife is in here. How you doing, baby? And also, what else? We have a social media platform if you want to join. But again, there's a questionnaire, 3 questions you have to answer because we only want to let the right people in. It's not built. We don't want no craziness, no ratchetness, no fighting. But it's called Blag Enough, and it's spelled BLAGGENUF, BLAGGENUF.com. So if you want to be in that space, it's really great. You can hit a button and find other members that live in your area. So that's one of the great features of it. And it operates a lot like Facebook. So feel free to go. Somebody type that in for me. It's BLAGGENUF.com. And last but not least, if you want to get a copy of any of my books, Black American Money, The New Black Power, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, or our financial flashcards, and get 40% off for the next day, just use the code. Go to drboycebooks.com and you can use the code Book Club 920. Book Club, all one word, Book Club 920. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you. And I'll see you guys soon. Take care now.